So if you feel play like this, and when you're riding along you hear clicks and grinding noises, it's time to replace the bottom bearing assembly. It's best to lay out all the tools you'll need so you don't have to rush around looking for them during the job. Firstly, the special tools. This is the puller. It's used for pulling the cranks off the bearing assembly. It's essential to have this tool. In my case the spindle was hollow, so I need to insert this steel rod to enable the puller to push on something. It needs to be the same length as the spindle. I found this in my junk box. And this is the removal tool. It is essential to have this. This wheel skewer comes in very handy if the assembly is in very tightly and is difficult to budge. You'll see how this helps later. You'll need an Allen key. This is an 8mm one and it fits the retaining bolts on the cranks and also the puller. This is a spanner, just the right size to fit the special tool, and sometimes if it's in very tightly you might need a bigger spanner, and this is not a bad spanner, the bigger the better. So now we can start the job of replacing the assembly. It should only take a few minutes. So we'll start the process off with getting the left crank off and the retaining ring on the left hand side. We need to remove the retaining bolt that holds the crank on. Insert the rod as the spindle is hollow, and then carefully insert the puller in the crank. And by screwing the part in, we can just pull this crank off the spline. I can now remove the retaining ring using the special tool. Simple, it's just a plastic bush. We can now go round to the right hand side and do a similar operation. Before we do the right hand side, we need to replace this retaining bolt so the rod has something to push against on this side. The right hand side is very similar to the left hand side. We just have to remove the retaining bolt. Wind back the puller, carefully thread it in, and then using the Allen key we wind it out. It should just drop off, which it does. Removing this cartridge from this side can be difficult, so I'll start off by inserting the special tool, and now I'm going to use the skewer to hold that tool engaged. This will make it much easier to use the force required. So I'll just engage that. This ring has got a different thread to the other one. It has to be removed as if you were tightening it up. So the direction is going to be clockwise. Well, it appears that you're tightening it up, but you're really removing it. This can be quite difficult to shift. So here we go, that's not so bad. We've loosened that off. Take the skewer out at this stage. And there we have the old bearing assembly. This is the cartridge as removed from the bike. The cartridge that you remove should also have a sticker on it as in this photo. You need to make a note of the numbers on it so you can purchase an identical replacement. 68 is the length of the cartridge body and 118 is the overall length of the spindle in millimetres. If you buy a replacement from a bike shop, take the old cartridge along or note the part number, in this case Shimano BB-ES30. Note the rust on this cartridge, indication that water has got in and was most likely the cause of the failure. Being lazy, I'm going to buy my replacement online at low cost. I'll put the old cartridge back while I'm waiting for it to be delivered. So we'll get on to chain reaction here and see what they've got. Type in bottom bearing, see what pops up. And there they are. We'll scroll down, just see if we can see anything that looks like the one we need. Again. I'll go again. Go again. Oh, there's something. Have a look at that one. And see what it looks like. It looks pretty good. Have a look at that sticker a bit closer. So it looks as though it's got the right numbers there. I think that one will do us. So we'll just put it in the cart and we'll pay for that one. There's the plastic bush. Seems okay, very smooth. So now it's time to install it on the bike. I notice there's quite a bit of dirt in the bottom bracket assembly down here, so I'm going to wash it out with some water. Being so low down on the ground, it does pick up a lot of stuff from the road surface, so it's best to get rid of all the grit and stuff in there. Looks pretty clean in there now, so a bit of squirt with some water to disperse it. Get rid of all the water, and now we're ready to refit the new bearing assembly. We have the two assemblies, so absolutely identical. So we'll insert the new one. I'll try and put it in by hand initially. I've got to remember that it's opposite, so I've got to turn it that way to engage the thread. Now that's engaged straight away. I can be pretty confident there won't be any problem with crossing the threads. So that's just winding in by hand, no problem at all. Last little bit, I'll use the tool. Tightens up the last bit and put a bit of effort into the last section there. Make sure it's pretty tight. Now we can attach the right crank complete with their rings. You can see I've smeared some grease on the spline so that it'll make it a bit easier to get it off in the future if I ever have to. So this is pretty straightforward. We can just put the crank on the spline, start and just screw in the retaining bolt. Similarly for the left hand side, but first I have to put in that plastic bush. So yeah, just put the crank on the spline. And wind in the retaining bolt. And that should be the job finished.